Anxiety is expensive, and I don't mean money. It costs you sleep, it costs you relationships, it steals time you'll never get back, moments you could have been present for, memories that should have been peaceful. It's like carrying a weight that nobody else sees, but you feel it every single day. And the worst part, most of us think this is just how life is now. Constant stress, constant worry, always bracing for what might go wrong. But the Stoics saw it differently. They believed that peace isn't found when the chaos stops. It's found when you stop letting the chaos control you. That's what we're diving into today. Not abstract philosophy, but real tools to deal with anxiety the way the Stoics would, calmly, clearly, and with purpose. Because once you realize that you're not powerless, that you actually have the ability to respond differently, everything begins to shift. The noise quiets, the fog lifts, and a kind of strength takes its place. If these reflections speak to something steady and honest inside you, something rooted in truth, growth, and the quiet strength of Stoicism, consider subscribing. It's a small gesture, but a meaningful one, a way to walk this path with intention. 1. Don't escape it, discard it. There's this illusion most of us carry around, that peace is just one solved problem away. We think, once I finish this project, or once they text me back, or once I figure this one thing out, then I'll be okay. We live as if peace is hiding just beyond the next checkbox. But here's the tough truth. It never is. That's the trick anxiety plays. It tells you that relief lives in the future, when really it's your relationship with the present that needs healing. Ancient Stoics like Marcus Aurelius knew this. He once wrote, "Today I escaped from anxiety," or "No, I discarded it because it was within me." Notice that shift. He didn't escape anything. He let go of something that was his to release. The philosopher Socrates believed that the unexamined life is not worth living, and anxiety often thrives in the unexamined places of our mind. It grows where we haven't brought awareness. You can't outrun anxiety because it's not chasing you from behind. It's riding with you in your thoughts, in your expectations, in your need to control what was never yours to control. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's exactly what anxiety does. It takes over silently, and we call it normal. But you are not powerless. The fact that it lives in you also means you have the power to release it. That breath you just took, that was your first step toward freedom. 2. Stop needing things to go your way. There's something funny about how we move through life. We create these silent blueprints in our heads about how things should go. The flight should be on time, the meeting should go smoothly, the kids should behave. And when things veer off course, even just a little, our whole sense of stability wobbles. Why? Because we've tied our peace to a version of reality that never really existed outside our minds. But here's the kicker. Life has never promised to follow your plans. As the Stoics remind us, much of what happens in the world is not in our control. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." The sooner we learn to tell the difference, the lighter we feel. The ancient Greeks wrestled with this too. Plato once wrote that a good decision is based on knowledge, not on numbers. In modern terms, that means we shouldn't measure a moment by how perfectly it fits our expectations, but by how wisely we respond to it. Anxiety feeds off that need for control. It thrives in the tight grip of, "This must go my way." But life is messy, unpredictable, beautifully flawed. And peace isn't found in fixing every crack. It's in learning to sit calmly in the middle of the mess. Carl Jung once noted, Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness. So ask yourself, not, how can I make this perfect? But can I let this be imperfect and still be at peace? 3. Do hard things on purpose. Most of us spend so much time trying to avoid discomfort that we forget how capable we actually are. We tiptoe around the things we fear, failure, rejection, uncertainty, as if avoiding them will somehow make us stronger. But avoidance does the opposite. It builds the fear up in our minds, inflates it until it feels untouchable. The Stoics had a different strategy. They didn't wait for hard things to happen. They practiced them. Seneca used to sleep on the floor, wear rough clothes, and eat basic food even though he was wealthy. Why? Because he wanted to remind himself that he could survive discomfort. That fear shrinks when you face it directly. He asked himself, "Is this what I was so afraid of?" And usually the answer was no. There's something powerful about choosing to do what scares you. Aristotle believed that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of it. And you can't master something you're not willing to engage with. Fast for a day. Walk into silence without your phone. Speak up when you'd rather stay quiet. When you do this, you start to realize that the fear was mostly smoke and mirrors. As Carl Jung put it, what you resist persists. But when you look it in the eye, it changes shape. Anxiety thrives in the unknown. It loves vague what-ifs and half-seen shadows. But once you bring those shadows into the light, once you choose the difficult thing, you take your power back. Not because the fear vanishes, but because you're no longer running from it. 4. Walk it off. Some problems don't need solving, they just need space. You ever notice how you sit with a tangled thought for hours and get nowhere, but after a 10-minute walk, things suddenly feel lighter? It's not magic, it's motion. The Stoics believed the mind and body weren't separate. They were part of the same system. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, found peace not just in writing meditations, but in moving through the world with awareness. When thoughts started to loop, he grounded himself in simple action. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul, he wrote. But sometimes that retreat begins with putting one foot in front of the other. Aristotle was said to teach philosophy while walking. His followers were called the Peripatetics, the walking thinkers. They knew what modern psychology now confirms. Movement changes how we think. It disrupts the internal noise, loosens emotional knots, gives your nervous system a moment to reset. Carl Jung believed that walking in nature had a healing effect, not because it fixed your life, but because it helped you recenter in the midst of it. That tightness in your chest. It doesn't always mean something's wrong. Sometimes it just means you need air. So before you spiral deeper into your thoughts, pause, put on your shoes, step outside. Let your body lead your mind for once. You don't have to solve everything, you just have to move. And in that movement, a little peace can sneak in through the back door. 5. Prepare, but don't panic. Most people think that thinking about worst-case scenarios will only make their anxiety worse. And to be fair, it can, if you do it wrong. If all you're doing is imagining everything going off the rails and spiraling into panic without a plan, then yes, you're just feeding the fear. But if you do it the Stoic way, it's a whole different story. The practice is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Seneca used it to imagine all the things that could go wrong, not to freak himself out, but to prepare his mind. He believed that if you familiarize yourself with difficulty ahead of time, you'll handle it more calmly when it arrives. Or even better, you might realize it's not nearly as bad as your fear made it out to be. This is what modern psychology calls cognitive rehearsal. Instead of passively worrying, You mentally walk through how you would respond. Carl Jung said, "Even when it's darkest, I can do something." That something, that plan, is often enough to stop the fear from taking over. Aristotle believed that practical wisdom, or phronesis, was the ability to act rightly in uncertain situations. And that's exactly what this is. You're not obsessing, you're preparing. You're reminding yourself that chaos doesn't mean you're powerless, that you can meet the moment with calm, because you've already walked through it in your mind. Plan, prepare, then release it. You don't need to carry the weight of every possibility. Just know that if it happens, you'll handle it. 6. Talk it out. There's a strange thing about the human mind. It can be a brilliant ally or a relentless trickster. When you're stuck in your own head, everything feels heavier. Thoughts echo, bounce around, and start sounding more convincing than they actually are. You replay a comment someone made, analyze the silence after a text, or predict an entire disaster off a single glance. And in that mental loop, things feel urgent, real, undeniable. But then you say it out loud, just once, and suddenly it loses some of its grip. You hear yourself and go, "Wait, is that actually true?" This is the power of externalizing thought. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are troubled by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Sometimes your estimate is just off. Talking reveals that. Plato believed that dialogue was essential to wisdom, not just because of the exchange of ideas, but because we clarify our own thinking through conversation. What feels enormous in silence can feel manageable when voiced. Carl Jung put it this way: loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Talking doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, and it makes you clearer. Whether it's a close friend, a therapist, or even journaling as if you're speaking to someone, it all counts. The key is stepping outside the echo chamber in your own head. That's where truth begins, and that's where anxiety starts to shrink. 7. Let it be what it is. It's wild how quickly a small inconvenience can snowball into a full-blown emotional storm. One minor thing goes wrong, maybe your coffee spills or your meeting runs late, and suddenly your whole day feels cursed. Not because of what happened, but because of how you layered meaning on top of it. Now you're not just frustrated, you're frustrated about being frustrated. You're judging yourself for overreacting, questioning your mindset, trying to fix a feeling that probably would have passed on its own if you'd just let it breathe. The Stoics had a word for this kind of inner chaos: pathos, uncontrolled emotion born from faulty judgment. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." The delay didn't spiral you, you spiraled you. Socrates believed that clarity came from knowing what things are, and just as importantly, what they aren't. Most of the time, the problem isn't the situation, it's our resistance to it. Carl Jung once wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." Think about that. Every time you push back on discomfort, try to label or fix it instantly, you actually give it more weight. But there's power in not reacting, in just observing. When you let the moment be what it is, a moment, not a monster, you return to your center. Not everything needs your analysis. Not everything needs your energy. Let the feeling rise, notice it, and let it float by like a cloud. That's not avoidance, that's wisdom. 8. Love what happens. There's a quiet kind of strength in people who don't flinch when life gets messy. They get hit with setbacks, disappointments, heartbreaks, things they never asked for, and somehow they don't just survive it, they seem to grow from it. They're not cold or emotionless, they're grounded, rooted, like they've made peace with something most of us are still resisting. That's the heart of amor fati, the Stoic idea of learning to not only accept what happens, but to love it, not in some naive, toxic positivity kind of way, but in a deeper, almost spiritual sense. The understanding that what you face isn't punishment, it's preparation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacle isn't the enemy, it's the path. This isn't about tolerating hardship with a fake smile. It's about looking at your circumstances, even the unwanted ones, and asking, what strength is being forged here? Carl Jung said, "The greatest and most important problems of life are fundamentally unsolvable. They can never be solved, but only outgrown." That's what embracing fate looks like, trusting that what's difficult today might be the very thing that evolves you. Plato taught that the soul grows through struggle, through friction, through tension. Maybe that's why some of the wisest people you'll ever meet have been through the fire. Not because they escaped it, but because they used it. Amor fati is a quiet decision, to stop running from what is and to rise with it instead. 9. Nature doesn't rush, and neither should you. There's a certain stillness you can only find in nature, the kind that doesn't need permission or explanation. When you step outside and let your eyes adjust to the rhythm of the natural world, something inside you slows down too. You start to notice the way the trees just stand there, doing their thing without urgency. The sky doesn't apologize for changing color. The stars don't panic about being late. And in that space, in that silence, you're reminded of something crucial. You were never built to live like a machine. You're not meant to be running non-stop, filling every second, measuring your worth by how productive you are. As the Stoics might put it, nature itself is a form of wisdom, one that doesn't shout but whispers. Marcus Aurelius often found comfort in the natural order of things. He reminded himself that everything has its cycle, its season, and that resisting this truth only creates unnecessary suffering. "Observe how the stars move in harmony," he wrote, "and let that rhythm guide your own inner life." Plato also believed that beauty, especially in nature, has a moral function. It brings the soul back to balance. That golden light at dusk, that quiet before sunrise, it's not just pretty, it's healing. Carl Jung once said, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." But nature doesn't ask. It just is. And in learning from it, we return to ourselves, not as performers or checklists, but as living, breathing beings with a right to pause. 10. Control what you can, let go of the rest. We spend a surprising amount of energy trying to control things we never had a grip on to begin with. We replay conversations, worry about how someone perceived us, or try to predict outcomes we have no say in. It's exhausting. And worse, it's pointless. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. Epictetus said it clearly. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. That line alone could change your life. Because once you really let it sink in, you start to feel lighter. Not because your problems disappear, but because you stop carrying the ones that were never yours to carry in the first place. Socrates believed the key to a wise life was knowing what you don't know. And part of that humility is realizing that you don't control other people. Not their moods, not their opinions, not their actions. But you do control how you respond. You control whether you show up with integrity, whether you choose patience over panic, whether you put your energy into what moves the needle or what drains you dry. In a world full of unknowns, your mindset is the one constant you get to shape. So next time something starts to weigh you down, pause. Ask yourself, is this in my control? If the answer is no, it's not yours to hold. Let it go. Focus on what is. 11th, be kinder to yourself. There's a voice in your head that most people never hear, but you do, every single day. It comments on your choices, second-guesses your decisions, and throws little jabs when you slip up. And if we're being real, that voice can be brutal. It says things you'd never say to someone you love. What's wrong with you? You'll never figure this out. Of course you messed it up again. Now imagine saying that to a friend, out loud. They'd be devastated. So why do we speak to ourselves this way and call it normal? The Stoics knew the power of inner dialogue. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that he was a soul in training, not a finished product. He wrote, "Don't be ashamed of needing help. You have a duty to fulfill just like a soldier on the wall of battle. That's not weakness, that's being human." Socrates often said that the key to a good life was knowing yourself. But knowing yourself doesn't mean tearing yourself down every time you fall short. It means understanding your flaws and still choosing compassion. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that's what most of us avoid. We think harshness leads to growth, when in reality, it usually leads to shame and paralysis. Real growth starts with kindness, the kind that holds you accountable without cruelty. So next time that voice pipes up, pause. Talk to yourself like someone worth protecting, because you are, and no one needs your kindness more than the person you spend every moment with. You. 12th, don't suffer twice. The mind is brilliant, but left unchecked, it can also be a cruel storyteller. It drifts into the future and starts writing tragedies that haven't happened yet. You rehearse a conversation that might go wrong. You imagine a plan falling apart. You feel the emotions of something that hasn't even occurred, fear, shame, regret, before there's any actual reason to feel them. That's the cost of anticipatory suffering. And the Stoics had a name for this kind of self-inflicted torment. Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality. You end up paying interest on a debt you may never owe." Socrates believed that wisdom began with understanding what we do not know, and the future, by its very nature, is unknowable. Yet so often we live as if worst-case scenarios are a guarantee. We confuse preparation with prediction, but there's a clear line between being ready and being consumed. Carl Jung said, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." When we spin in anxiety, we're often avoiding the actual moment, the real challenge, by obsessing over imagined ones. Aristotle taught that the wise person acts with reason and moderation, not fear. So yes, make the plan, think it through, be responsible. But then, let it go. Don't carry pain that isn't yours yet. Don't lose sleep over events that may never happen. Reality is enough to deal with. And if something does go wrong, trust this. You'll meet it with the strength you've built, not before, not after, but when it matters most. 13. Don't believe every story you tell yourself. It's wild how quickly our minds jump from a single moment to a sweeping conclusion. One awkward pause, one mistake, one piece of feedback, and boom, your brain's off to the races. You're the villain. You're the failure. You're the one they're all secretly talking about. But pause for a second. What actually happened? Someone didn't text back. A project didn't land perfectly. Those are events. Neutral. It's your interpretation that makes them heavy. The Stoics were crystal clear about this. It's not the thing itself that troubles us. It's our judgment of it. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." We are meaning-making machines. Plato believed that the soul seeks clarity, but often gets trapped in illusion, mistaking shadows for truth. And that's what anxiety does. It convinces you that your fears are facts. But they're just stories, narratives your mind has written without your permission. The good news? You can rewrite them. You can slow the script down, question it, and shift it. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what has happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That includes what you choose to believe. So next time your brain kicks into drama mode, try saying this: "It didn't go how I hoped. But that doesn't mean it's a disaster. I'm still learning. I'm still here." That simple shift from judgment to understanding might be the thing that pulls you back to reality. Not the harsh version you imagined, but the one grounded in growth, not fear. 14th, stop using your imagination against yourself. The human mind is incredibly powerful, capable of building cathedrals, solving mysteries, writing poetry, and dreaming up futures that have never existed. But that same creative engine, when left unchecked, can also become a weapon we turn against ourselves. One offhand comment from someone, and suddenly your imagination creates a whole drama. "They're mad at me, I messed up, it's all going downhill." Without even realizing it, you're living in a movie you wrote, directed, and starred in, except none of it's actually happening. This is exactly what the Stoics warned us about. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your imagination can be either your ally or your captor. You choose. Socrates believed that unexamined thoughts lead to confusion and suffering. When your imagination runs wild, the only way to take back control is to pause and examine. Is this real, or is this just fear dressed up as foresight? Carl Jung added another layer to this when he wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." In other words, what we fear often reveals what we care about most. But that doesn't mean the fear is true. So try using that same creative energy for something better. Picture things going right. Imagine strength instead of failure, connection instead of rejection. Start telling yourself stories that serve your growth instead of stories that feed your fear. You're already a powerful storyteller. Now it's time to write something worth living. 15. Keep a reminder close. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when life hits you with too much at once. Deadlines, expectations, conversations you haven't had yet. Suddenly, your mind starts racing, your chest tightens, and you feel like everything needs your attention right now. But that's rarely true. Most of the time, what you really need is a pause, a check-in, a way to cut through the noise and come back to center. That's where the Stoics were masters. Their answer to chaos wasn't to control everything, it was to control themselves. Epictetus boiled it down to a single powerful question: is this within my control? It sounds simple, but try it the next time your anxiety kicks in. You'll notice something. Just asking the question gives you space. If the answer is yes, if there's something you can do, then do it. Take action. Even a small step forward makes the fear smaller. But if the answer is no, if the outcome is truly out of your hands, that's when you breathe. That's when you release it. Not because you don't care, but because you choose not to carry what isn't yours. Aristotle once said that clarity of purpose brings order to the soul, and that's what this question does. It cuts the clutter. Carl Jung wrote, "I am not what has happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That choice starts with awareness, so make it your mantra. Stick it on your wall. Ask it daily. Is this in my control? That question is your compass. Let it guide you. 16. Don't let it change who you are. It's one of the hardest truths to accept. You don't get to control what life throws at you. People will lie. Plans will fall apart. Some days will knock the wind out of you for no clear reason. And yet, there's a kind of power hiding in that chaos. A choice that no one can take from you. The Stoics believed that true damage isn't caused by events themselves, but by how we let them shape us. As Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That means no matter what happens, your character is still yours to protect. Aristotle taught that virtue lies in action, not reaction. Courage, kindness, patience, these aren't automatic. They're choices made under pressure. You can lose the job, be betrayed, miss the opportunity, and still decide not to become bitter or hard. You can feel anxiety rising and still choose not to let it rob you of joy. That doesn't mean ignoring what hurts. It means refusing to let pain rewire your values. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." It's easy to let life make you cold. It's easy to let fear or resentment become your default mode. But it's a far greater act of strength to stay grounded in who you are, even when life tries to shake you loose. That's where real freedom lives, not in avoiding suffering, but in refusing to let it define you. 17. Forget what they think. We spend so much of our lives performing, quietly adjusting who we are just enough to avoid judgment, saying what sounds acceptable, holding back what feels real. All because we've given strangers, some we barely know, this incredible power, the ability to define our worth. But here's something the Stoics understood deeply. No one's opinion of you can change who you actually are. Their praise doesn't add to your value. Their criticism doesn't subtract from it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Let that sit for a second. Socrates taught that the good life is built from the inside out, not by chasing the approval of the crowd, but by aligning your actions with your values. Did you act with integrity? Did you do what you knew to be right, even if no one clapped for it? That's what matters. Not applause, not validation, just the quiet, solid truth of having been honest with yourself. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But you can't do that if you're constantly shape-shifting to meet everyone else's expectations. The goal isn't to impress. The goal is to be real. And here's the twist. Once you start living that way, you realize something powerful. The only person who needs to be proud of you is you. Everything else is just noise. No matter what life throws your way, remember this. Peace isn't found in control or perfection or other people's approval. It's found in how you choose to respond. That choice is yours, always. If today's reflection stirred something in you, there's another video waiting on the screen that might take you even deeper. Give it a watch. And truly, thank you for being here and for being part of Stoic Journal. This space only exists because thoughtful people like you keep coming back. Until next time, stay grounded, stay steady, and keep walking the path.